I'm going to just review some final project ideas with some of you, and you have ideas, show me some websites. So just show some of the things that I've seen. We'll do a homework review. Take a look at that. I was just taking a look, and I've helped a few work on that as well, and different approaches some people have taken. I've seen a lot of Flexbox, obviously. I saw some grid too. It's open for your interpretation, right? I mean, you have enough skills, you know how to move things around. Using media queries, you can just force a thing into another position. So at that point in time, using grid versus using Flexbox, that's just going to be a preference. Like, I'm not going to say that one's better than the other one. Depends on what you're trying to move. If you can figure it out with Flexbox, awesome. If you can figure it out with grid, awesome. And then all the other little nuances, right? Making something disappear, display none, right? You know how to do that. Make it reappear with display flags, or display inline, or display inline block, whatever. So we'll just take a look at what I have, and then if anybody wants to shoot me their solution that's working, we can take a look at that. Or if there's like one or two things, one or two issues, a lot had trouble trying to position those bottom bars and get all the bars stacked, and the 2 bars, and then all 3 bars. So we can talk about that. Then we'll move into transitions to discuss when and where to use transitions. Transitions are a really nice thing. I think I had shown an article that had like the top 10 things about front-end web development, and one of those was transitions. Mobile, responsive. I'd say responsive falls into the transition, right? Because things are moving, maybe things transition to a new spot. Using the transition property, so adding a transition means that there's this special property that we call transition, and then we decide what we want to transition at that point in time. Not all property, not using the transition property, we target some element properties, like width, height, opacity, right? Some standard properties that you might change would be something like, I want the width to grow, or the height to grow, or the height to, did I misspell that? All right. Opacity. You might want the opacity to change color, or the background color to change color, depending on what you're doing. Or you might want to actually move the thing, right? Or reposition it. So reposition this element. And for positioning, what have you learned to position something? I almost feel like that's just like the silence means, come on, he's asking the rhetorical question, right? So reposition, we can use the position property. I'm bringing this up because we now have this property too, this transform property. And look what it can do. It can help us move things. So now we also have a second option to do transform. And then transform has its own values for X and Y positioning, for translating something, for rotating something, for scaling something up, okay? When you do width and height, and you grow something, it kind of grows out this way, right? It's here, it's locked in, that's its position, and then it kind of grows out this way. Scaling takes the thing and scales it up at all dimensions. So sometimes that's what you want. You want it to kind of scale up. So we'll take a look at scaling, So these are the properties, these are the things that we're working on. We'll take a look at some other like third-party tools as well. There's a lot of stuff out there for doing that. So initial layouts, just as it pertains to the project, I'm just going to kind of go over this briefly, maybe go over it again, because as of next week, the deliverable is going to be at least a little mock-up, a design, something of what your final project idea is. And these were mock-ups that I captured from the previous class. So create a little Pinterest board just to keep track of them, make them available. And so these were submissions from previous classes in regards to their design. So somebody, went to the effort of drawing this out in their notebook. Right? This is what they showed me. Hey, I want to do this. This is my thing, and have an H2, an image, a logo. Here's the When you go to maybe responsive, this is what it's going to look like, or page 2. It gave them an idea to work with, right? Then someone else used a third-party tool to kind of mock things up. This person worked in UX, so they had access to tools. They knew how to do that. And so they decided to mock something up. And then they built something from that. Okay? There's more to this. I just took a snapshot of the thing just to make it easier to look at. Another one would have been like, I don't know, like a portfolio page. This is just a basic sketch of what you want. It could have been just this page too. This could have been the whole thing. One big thing with just that, or you could scroll down and see more information. The goal here is to demonstrate your ability to do HTML, CSS, right? Layout. Hopefully you make it mobile. And then add some JavaScript later on when we get to JavaScript, right? We're going to get to JavaScript this week, and then it's JavaScript. And then it's a lot of clicking on things. I click on this, and this thing happens. I click on that, and this other thing happens. But there's a lot of JavaScript that you have to understand to get to that point. When you click on something, what's a function? How do I pass something to a function? How do I get something out of a function? That in itself takes a while to ingest, all right? If you thought HTML and CSS took a while, JavaScript is just kind of like a pivot in how you think. It's a paradigm shift in how you think. All this code to see one little thing happen, like quite literally, right? When we do HTML and CSS, all your code is visible on the screen. It's kind of a visual representation of it. Once again, they don't have to be amazing mock-ups. Just show me something that you're thinking about it. Obviously, when I see it, I'll see an idea. Maybe I have already spoken to you. You showed me some other things. Like, hey, this website. I want to work on this website. And just on working on a website, what did I see here? I had met with Keith. So Keith and I met this morning. And he's thinking about kind of rebuilding this. And we discussed at his company that some of the developers said, hey, you should really learn things like Bootstrap and things like that. So he's going to start to kind of investigate Bootstrap, which is a front-end layout framework, and kind of rebuild this page up. And they have like templates. I think you can download this page as a template. And it's just nice design, right? You could build this for your project page. If you wanted this as your portfolio page, you could just have a nice picture. These could be a relaxer, fashion blog, a mobile responsive one, and half a dozen other little projects that we worked on. They don't have to be amazing things, a full-blown web development, but you're showing what you know, okay? Positioning things, right? This could be, this looks like grid to me if I was to do this, right? Or Flexbox, either one could make this thing happen. One big section here, and the middle section, another section. This could be Flex 2, Flex 1, Flex 1, or it could be grid 2FR, 1FR, 1FR, however you want to do it. We can make this thing happen in either tool relatively easily. And then I think the only other thing that I was going to show is there are front-end frameworks out there that we're not going to touch on in this class. But there's other frameworks that if you wanted to investigate them, by all means, take a look at them. They're not too hard. After what you already know, these things are lots of just classes. Add a class and it does the thing. Right? A couple of script tags to like get it all set up. But things like Bootstrap, it's the most well-known, popular framework that's out there. Materialize is also something that's really kick-ass. And I've worked with both of those. Something like Materialize, I mean, there's lots of them down here. There's like Semantic UI and Material UI. There's so many of them, but they give you the pros and the cons as to why use one, maybe use the other. They're all being used out there, and I can't say, this is like, should I use Grid or should I use Flexbox? I'm like, I don't know. Like, what are you trying to do? And then if you go just take a look at their site, like here, you can see like, hey, there's some components. This is a nav bar. And so we built nav bars, and we built nav bars that look something very much like this, right? UL with LIs with anchor tags inside of something else, usually a nav, but they have it inside this nav wrapper. You look at that and you understand this, right? You know what's happening with this thing. You know the containers, you know the parents, you know the children. You know that there's a class here. It's probably being targeted for some sort of CSS, right? This class is being targeted. That one is also Here's an ID for nav, mobile. I have to assume that that's going to change in the CSS when it hits some sort of mobile view, okay? And then they change it up. And what you'll start to see are some things like, this says right, this says left, okay? The logo up there is on the left side, I believe, right? Yeah. So the logo's there, the nav is on the right, so that's nav right, this is nav left. See how easy it is to like move it. I don't know what they're doing to under the hood to move them. Maybe they're using Flexbox, maybe they're not. I don't know, maybe they're using position absolute. I'd have to take a look and see what they're doing to get this thing left. But even here, look, it's already mobile view and it already hides it. You can go here and just take a look. Say, oh, well, how did they get this here? And what's the setting? And what are they doing here? Look, position absolute, right. You could use Flexbox, you could use grid. You could use display inline block to move these things around. I'm just showing you like how they're doing it, which doesn't mean that that's the hands down way of doing it, but you can investigate it and see and learn how they're doing it. Cool. So you can always take a look at those frameworks, Bootstrap, Materialize, either one. Either one of those I'm familiar with. If you start going down like semantic UI, I'd have to look at documentation to like really understand what's happening there, but they're all the same thing. This class does that thing. It's really that. I just have to know what the class is. What are you trying to do? What thing are you trying to do? Then let me look for the class, and then we get it done. It's really, at this point in time, I could get a job at any company where they use any framework, and I could be like, all right, show me the documentation. What do you got? Let me take a look and know from what I understand of frameworks. The only other thing I would suggest when it does come to frameworks, the only other nuance here, I'm going to close it, is Materialize uses something called Google's Material Design. It's a design layout. So everyone here uses Google at some point in time, right? And you know that they've updated their UI. That UI is an implementation of material design. It's a design concept. It's a design concept that is represented here through Materialize. Materialize like, oh, so these are the design concepts? Sweet. It's like a UX team decided to like come up with the design, and then Materialize said, we're going to implement it like this. That same UI that you just had in the image, this is how we do it. And then Bootstrap's like, oh, you want to do material? Oh, this is how we do it. At the end of the day, it's the same design. It's the same thing. So you can always take a look and see that. Once again, that's more an advanced thing. This is a way of designing things. I don't know if this, no, this is there. But if you looked up material design, you would see. All right. So start thinking about your project. Think about what you want to build. Show me examples of it. Shoot me, Slack me, whatever you want to do. Always have time to like look at something really quick and be like, oh, that's cool. What are you trying to do? Any questions on final projects? Like there was a question, when should we start working on the project? And I was like, first day of class. That's when you should have started working on it. And by working, I mean thinking about it, right? You're taking a web development class, said there's a final project. Look for things that you wanted to do. Like draw a picture of how it is that you wanted this thing to behave. Right? So no questions. No ones. All right, have questions, reach out. Homework review. All right, so let's take a look at a solution here. So the homework was for you to take something and turn it into mobile, right? So the starter code, let me just grab the starter code, what the starter code was, right? Here is the, right? Responsive, oh no, position, it's under position. Here was the starter code, and then I'm gonna open up the mock-up too. So if you ever wanna know, I know last week we left without me going over the homework, but this is where the homework is. It's always in the homework tab. So if you have a question, go to the homework tab. Everyone should have access to the Trello board. If you don't, reach out to me and we'll make sure you get access to the Trello board. So this was the design. This is mobile. That was tablet, and then that was desktop. And you just had to take this starter code here, right? This was the starter code, and do it. and turn that into, so here, probably relatively easy at this point in time, right? We just got to get these things this way and get rid of that, and boom, I got mobile view. And then when you expand, you would have had, these two just need to take up 50% each of that entity, and then this would take it all up. And when you get to here, it's almost done, right? I mean, a couple of things, and this thing is almost kind of where it needs to be. There were some things in, the CSS that you would have opted to remove. I would remove them next time for the class. There were older things in here. I think there was like floats, a few things that you would just remove. We didn't cover floats. I don't really want you to use floats. This thing doesn't need floats. Take it out, refix it with Flexbox or something, right? Or grid, however you wanted to do it. Did anyone edit the HTML? Did anyone go in and say, hey, I'm going to change the HTML at all? Or you did it just in CSS? Maybe targeted with classes, right? We know that we can target almost anything using CSS. Like, I don't have to go in here to target column 3. I don't have to add a new class to target column 3. I can just do nth of type 3, right? Or, nth of type 3, column, nth of type 3. Boom, I got the third column, right? I could do last of type, right? First of type, nth of type. So you know that there's ways to do it. You didn't have to go in. Some people did. I did work with a few people on editing it. They had ideas on changing it. I think next time I would make it like a requirement that you don't touch the HTML. That you force yourself to make it work with the CSS only. And then so the final design really, once again, is that. I'm missing the hamburger menu. I was playing with this earlier. And to get it like this, just to get the lengths, right, of these things, you would have to have it edited. I mean, at the very bottom are the media queries. Just to show you the media queries for this, there aren't a lot of things happening here. This is 768, and only a handful of things need to be changed here in the media query for 768. And then only 3 things need to be changed for 1024. So you didn't have to make a huge amount of edits to get it where you needed to get to. But to get this like that, right? So let me move this over, right? Because that's our mobile here. Whoop. I'm just going to take a look and see, what do we have? We have a main, and it looks like main. I'm just taking a look at what's in the CSS, right? And we have display flex. Okay, so this has display flex. Okay. And so if we have display flex, how would we get them to stack up on top of each other? So if I get rid of that, I don't even think it needs to be here. I mean, it looks like they're just stacking up, right? So I'm not even sure these right now are doing any, oh, here we go. There we go. Flex wrap is doing something. So in this instance, did anyone investigate something using flex wrap or look at it? I mean, we had talked about it. Flex wrap is another Flexbox property. We can't go into every Flexbox property, but you might have discovered how to wrap things. And what wrap does is this. See how they're sitting next to each other as they normally would? How do I get them to stack up on top of each other? If I wasn't using flex wrap, how would we do that? It's flex direction column, right? And then they stack up. That would, all you need to do is kind of just do those 2 things, and this would have been done, right? Remove the nav, which would have been display none, right? I think if we went to the header, where's the nav? Here's the nav. It's probably, should have been display none. I don't know why it's display block. Maybe they went into the UL and did display none, display flex. I'm not sure, maybe the headers? Nope. Yeah, so you don't need flex there, but later on I'm going to use flex for other things. So I don't need them there for that design, but I know I'm going to use it later So I can opt to like just use flex there and get them the way that I want them to look. And then later on, I could change things like justify content, because at a later point in time, I would have to change it to flex. And then when you go back, it removes flex and it might mess up some settings. So there's a chance that things could change. And if it means just setting it here, knowing that later on I am going to change those things to use some FlexBox properties, the children are going to have like Flex 1 now and like Flex 2 or whatnot, then I might opt just to make that setting up here. But you don't need to do it now.
So the best practice is not to keep the model as lean as
I would say best practice is to keep everything as lean as possible. But if in the end I already know that I am going to turn flex on later, then it really doesn't matter because that property has to be turned on at some point in time. So if I turn it on here, then I don't have to turn it on here. So it's just one property of where I wanted to turn it on, right? If I assumed 95% of the time people were only going to view it on mobile, then maybe I might make that option not to include it. Because at that point in time, like no one's really going to use it on desktop. So maybe not. Because then I truly am writing for mobile at that point in time, not desktop. So expand it a little bit more here. Well, I think I spent too much. I think because I changed flex here when I went to main and I got rid of flex wrap, that changed a few things. And so these elements now, if we go to 768, what did I do? Oh, because I added flex direction, that changed things because that's not what this thing was meant to do. What questions do you have on the homework? Like what was the biggest challenge? Did anyone use grid? 1, 2, okay, 3, awesome. Did you find grid easy to implement for the style? Okay. And I'm going to assume most people then opted for FlexBox, right? FlexBox. Okay, once again, either one is good to go. You can make those decisions as you go along. I think grid at that point in time adds more, right? Because you got to do display grid and direction and like, you know, flex, you know, grid columns and like rows and then grid gaps if you wanted to use them. So there are more properties that you have to add, but once again, there's a lot that you can do. And with grid by itself, there is so much that you can do. Just like FlexBox, you know, we just kind of like touch the surface of FlexBox. With grid, we just touch the surface of grid. There's so much more that you can do with grid. There is a responsive side to grid. All right, so I'll post this. If anyone did have like a final, if your grid version meets the requirements and is all the responsive, just shoot it to me and I'll add it as, hey, this is a grid option to do as well, okay? And I still encourage you to keep working on it. Get rid of all the settings, go back, make it responsive. That responsiveness will definitely help for your project, okay? So we are gonna do the transition property. Okay, transition property. CSS transitions. One of the things I did ask too, let me just go back here real quick. In the homework, there was hey, you know, find a site that includes one transition that you would like to include in your final project. And then just post it there. I don't know. I didn't get a lot of posts, but I got a few. So, you know, Allison, click and then slide right. So I haven't taken a look at them. I don't really know what they do. But if this is something that you see and you're like, ooh, I like this, I want to do this. Okay. So this page is frozen, right? I can't, no, I'm not saying it's frozen. It stops there and you have to click to enter. There's no scrolling there. I can't scroll down. So I'm going to assume I have to click to enter. See, that's pretty cool, right? The fact that you clicked and this image here went, positioned itself here, right? So text came out of nowhere, right? I'm just going to refresh the page and see. True. Oh, I still have to go back in. That's nice little transitions. Okay, and this text moves up, right? We could easily do that with positions and transform, give a text a starting position, and then just move it up, right? Easy enough. That's really cool, right? The ability to do that. Now that's a lot. That's going to take you a while to do. Like that would be the project, to be able to like get all those transitions, right? And then make it mobile responsive. Pretty cool. What else? What did you get, Darren? What's this one? Once again, the cooler sites, that's already cool, right? I mean, these are the kind of new designs, right? Everybody wants to see things moving around. Yeah, things just come. And it's really simple. It's a simple site. There's not a lot of stuff going on. There's a little bit of text and there's an image here, right? I would have to ask, you know, for UX, like, what's all the white space? Like, this is an artistic kind of site. When I see like huge white space there, I'm like, well, why isn't the image up here? Like, I want to see the image. I have to scroll more now to see it, right? And that's it. Pretty cool. Well, that's really nice. I like this layout. I like the way that they came in. MailChimp. I don't know where that just looks like maybe a GIF or something. I don't see it. Oh, the hover? Oh, that's cool. And then click on that. Nice. All right. That's easy. We could easily do that today using background color. We're going to be doing hover. Hover is going to be the key, the trigger for us today. Without knowing JavaScript, we only really have one trigger in CSS, and that's like hover. If I hover over the thing, then I can force something to change, and that's really just the hover. Awesome. What do we got here? I only have two more. Since we don't have a lot, I'll just show whatever we got. Oh, I have to create an account? All right, so we won't go to that one, yeah. Maybe when I go home, I'll create an account. This is nice, right? Awesome, I like that. Kind of cool. There's a lot of stuff going on there, like things are coming out of nowhere, pages start to begin at a certain point, now there's just text. Text comes out of nowhere, like this effect here is kind of cool, but this thing is behind it, and then when you get to the top, then it moves. It's really cool. I'd have to take a look. And then it changes color. It really is a dynamic site. I would have to ask though, like, is it too much going on? Like, I'm confused. I don't even know where I am anymore because I scrolled and I'm just looking at the animations and I'm like, but what did I come here to look for? So just know, like, some stuff is just overkill. Giving too much just for the sake of being cool is going to be too much. And then you're going to lose the people that came to your site for the thing. They can't find the thing. They're lost in the transitions, and now you never got to sell them the thing because they can't seem to find it. All right? So that's cool. Keep adding stuff here, whatever it is. Shoot me a link too. A lot of the times, just I went back. I'm just going to go up to a simple one, this one. What I wanted to show you is you can investigate the sites. Go to Developer Tools. I'm going to get out of this. If you go to Developer Tools and I inspect the page, there may be something in here that tells me what kind of animation library they're using. Like, this is a lot of classes. Look at this. This is all these classes in this data BG set, and then all of this. That's a lot of information. I'd have to ask what's going on here with all of this. I'm not really sure what they're doing there. But I would go up to maybe the head, which is someplace we don't go to anymore, right? Because we've been focused in on the body. We're going to get to the head, but if you go to the head, you might see some libraries in here that represent JavaScript libraries. There's a lot of stuff. Look at all of these icons they're linking to. There's the title, another thing, the true design. I'm looking for maybe a JavaScript thing, Google Analytics. I don't see anything in here. Sometimes when you go to the sites, you'll see a reference to an animation library, and then I'm like, oh, they're using that library. And then I know what library they're using, and then we can go to their library. This doesn't contain anything that I'm aware of. So I'll try to, when I find one where I know the library, even like this, I'll just investigate this one real quick. Let's see, I'm gonna go up to the head, and just see. I'm looking for like script tags. Here's styles. Look at all these. Remember how we discussed not doing inline styles or not doing style tags? They have all of these style tags. Maybe this is for responsive. I'm not sure I'd write like that. Once again, I'm not that company. Maybe that's their design approach. This is how we do it. So you're going to see different approaches. All right. Sweet. So let's go to transitions. Now we're going to move on to transition. Let's finally get it. All right. So I think here for when to use, all right, so we have project ideas, discuss when and where to use transitions, right? You saw some of the websites, you found transitions, you already know where transitions should be used and where they're kind of effective, right? You've seen it. You've seen where too many transitions are going to drive you crazy. Things like drop down on the nav bar, scrolling down, hovering over the nav in a changing color. Okay, those are really cool places to use transitions. Things slide in, right? How many news sites do you go to that when you scroll down, like the services just slide in from either side, right? I mean, text slid in, but that also happens. So when we're doing, oh, I lost a bunch of things here. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the W3 schools because my slides don't seem to have everything that I'm looking for. All right. Using the transition property. The transition property, that's the property name, and then we're going to have some values that we can tell it. So there are going to be some required values and then some optional values. But the concept is this. If you're transitioning something, you have to transition something from one state to another state, right? So if I have a div here, and I want that div, here I'm going to have it grow in width, right? So in this instance, it's width. That's the property that I'm targeting. That means this thing probably needs a width, right? So what's my start? Maybe I'm going to go from a width of 50 pixels, and then I'm going to go to a width of maybe 100, right? So I have a start and an end. And so width becomes the property that you're targeting, okay? So this is required. So what is the property that you are targeting? In this instance, that property can be things like width, right? Wrote it over there, opacity, width and height, opacity, background color, BGC, BGC. There are some properties we can animate or transition and other properties that we cannot. So these are things that we can, but I have a list of things of all the ones that you can, and then some of them you just can't transition. They're not named. Like display. I can't go from display none to display block. There is no transition between those states. Okay, so there are properties that you can't transition, but I can transition opacity and make the thing appear, visibility, make the thing appear, make it not appear. Once it's not there visually, then I can do display none, and then it's gone from the page, right? So the property that we want to do, and then a lot of the times, the properties that, so this is required. We have to include this, okay? That's a required. The property, whatever it is that you're transitioning, that's required. Then we have something like the time, so the duration. How long do you want to take it? How long should it take to go from here to here? Is that going to be 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds? Is it going to be 500 milliseconds? So we can get from here to here, but instead of just like, it happened like that, right? They just went 100 pixels. But there was no aesthetic movements between these two elements, right? So we have to target the property right here, which what we're targeting is this, the width, right? And then we also want to do some sort of duration. So what's the duration going to be? I don't know, 1 second, 2 seconds, like what is it going to be at that point in time? So this is just going to be a time. Now it does it in milliseconds, but we can say 1 second or 2 seconds, and then we can transition. Some of the other properties that we can do here are delay. So the properties themselves, like the property width, duration, and then another thing that I usually work with is a delay. So the delay would be just like it sounds. How long should I wait before triggering the thing to do it, right? Just think if I had 3 boxes, what if I had 3 boxes, like what if I had 3 circles, and I wanted the circles to grow when I hovered over something, but I wanted them to grow at different delays. I wanted maybe them to grow at the same size, they'll all be at the same size, so maybe I'll get rid of this and they'll all be at the same size, or width and height, but I wanted this to happen in 1 second, or I wanted to delay this maybe 1 second, so this happens, then that happens, then this happens. So the delays are also going to be in seconds. Okay, so when we talk about duration and delay, they're going to be in seconds. We're going to use them in seconds. And that goes for this also. And these are optional. Okay, we don't have to use them. There is a 250 millisecond duration by default. Because the minute you use transition, you're like, you want to transition something, right? Yeah. All right, well, oh, you didn't give me the time, the duration, so 250 milliseconds is what I'm going to make it be for the transition time. Okay? So these are the base properties that we're going to work with. And with those, you can do a lot of different things. Okay? So let's go do some different things. Here I was going to show examples of what you can do with transitions. So you saw what you could do on a website with transitions, right? This takes transitions to another level. Imagine being the person that sits around all day making a little paper bird fly. There is no JavaScript here at all. This is solely transitions, transforms, right? Which we're going to learn later. And so it's doing all of this. I want to see if they do they have a transition? They may not even include transitions here. They may just go hardcore transforms and animation, which is another thing. But look at what it takes to make that happen. I'm going to go all the way down. 374 lines of CSS to make that happen. And then that's all they did. And they're using a templating engine here called Pug to do this. So you don't have to write bracket, opening, closing. This is just another way of doing it. But imagine being able to do that. Right? Here's another one that I'm hoping maybe we can emulate part of this later on when we do scaling. But these letters change, and if you hover over one, it kind of scales out that inner box, and it has these other boxes on top, which scale out in color also, right? Those are transitions. I'm not really sure I think it's like a font type site. Like if you click on it, it'll take you to another font. But yeah, shift font, whatever it is. And I think my last one here is just things like this for hamburger menus, right? So little things that we can do. So let us open up the code pen and just start coding a little bit. Let me select this out. No, we're going to add everything. Yeah. I just put it as a placeholder for myself, so I didn't have to go create a new one. So let's start with the most basic thing, right? So I'm going to save this, just zoom in a little bit. Let's create maybe just one single div. That's really all we need is a div. Something to work with, and in CSS, let's just give it maybe a width, 50 pixels, height, 50 pixels. I'll give it a border, 1 pixel, so we can see the thing. And now we have something there that we can transition from one place to another. All right. Now we have this thing. I want to transition it to something else, right? What we're going to do is this. First, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do div colon hover. Hover, we can hover over this thing. And if we hover over it, maybe we can give the width now, I don't know, 100 pixels. And let's see. I just want to see if this works. And it works. It grows. Maybe we'll even add the height. Height 100 pixels, right? It's no magic here. If I hover over it, look, the thing grows in width and height. But it does it very abruptly. It's like, boom. That's not what we want. So now we're going to add the transition property. Now, the transition property, you can see there's kind of two states to this thing, right? It's original state when we saw it, and then it's kind of like mutated state. Something initiated this. Later on, we won't use hover all the time. We'll use a class. I'll add a class to the thing that initiates this, right? So in JavaScript, you click on something, it finds the thing, it adds a class. Because it has the class, it has those properties now, right? But we want to transition between those. So I'm going to say, here's our transition property. Okay, so add transition property. So we're going to do this, transition, colon, and then what is the property we want to transition? Yeah, so let's just say we're going to do the width, right? Let's start with the width. We know the height also kind of goes. Let's do the width. And how long do we want to take? So let's just do this. We know that the property is the only thing we need. Is the only required, right? Just kind of jumps. Almost looks like it transitions a little bit. All right, I'm gonna stop the height only because I want to get one effect here. One thing at a time. Happens really fast. It's jumping. So now I'm going to say this. I want you to transition the width, and I want you to take, say, 1 second. You see now? Transitions nicely back and forth through the states. Okay? I'm going to change the, I think if I did 250, I don't know if that works, to be honest. Yeah. So I said there was a 250 millisecond, but there isn't because it jumped immediately. So I added 250 milliseconds here. And so now it happens in a quarter of a second versus 1 full second to make that transition, right? All right, so now I'm going to get height back in this thing. Just so we can see. Did do both transition? No. What happened? Only width, not height. And that's because I didn't target another transition. I just said target width. And because width and height change, I'm only saying transition the width, but don't transition the height. So if you want to transition, we can say height 1 second. We can include multiple properties. And now it happens, okay? You can target multiple things, give them different properties or optional values. This is always required. You have to tell it what you want to transition. If you want to transition different things, then you could do it like this and then use different properties like height. I could say 3 seconds. If that's the effect that you're looking for. Now, I almost do this. I don't really like having them all here, okay? I kind of opt to all encompass. If this was 3 seconds, then I'd have to leave it like this, okay? I'd have to say, well, you're very specific, but if you were 1 second, then I could change this and say, I want you to be looking at all of the properties that I have, and if any of them change anywhere, then 1 second is the duration. And now if I go, so it's just kind of a roll-up. It's an all-encompassing thing doing all versus each individual property, okay? Now we gave it a width and a height already, right? So now I'm just curious, what if I got rid of the width and a height here? Can I even hover over this thing? Oh, you can. And it kind of grows, but it's like, it's trying to do it so quickly, it's flipping out, all right? So that's not something you want to do. Another property that we could do also is, let's say I give a background color, and let's just say maybe, I don't know, light blue. There's light blue. Once again, if I hover, it just stays light blue, doesn't do anything. If I wanted the light blue now to change, right, we'd have to give it a different color. Background, and say maybe, I don't know, pink. Now if we do it, it'll change colors to pink, right? See if I got rid of that, and it still works, right? Because the default color is pink. The default color is white. So we have something to transition from and transition to, okay? You'll see this more, the limitations of the start and the ending value when we get to things like position property, left. If you just turn on position absolute and you say, oh, when you do the hover, I want you to go left 10 pixels, but you never define left 0, it doesn't go anywhere, okay? And then other things like maybe, what if I said opacity? Oh, here, I don't even need opacity there. If I went here and I said opacity, maybe I say opacity 0. Now the thing's just going to disappear. It's gone. It's back, okay? And the reason being is this thing has an opacity of 1, a starting value, just like it has a property of color as a starting value, and we can transition from one value to the next value doing this. And so hover becomes that key that we use to do this, all right? So working with the transition property really kind of fairly easy, you know, kind of like media queries. Here's a media query. When this thing changes, you change all these things. You just have to figure out what to change. And with this is the same kind of concept. What needs to change? What are we going to be changing for this to take effect? And the one thing we have is this hover in order to do this, okay? We could do something like, so if we wanted to do, I'm just going to add one more. I'm going to say position absolute, right? Now this thing is looking for like a position relative element. It's not in anything, so it's looking for up here. The only thing I'm gonna remove here is the opacity 0, so we don't see it disappear. I'm just gonna remove it. I just wanted to show you the opacity. So now if I go down to hover and I say left, I don't know, 100 pixels, it's not really transitioning, right? It's kind of like jumping there and it's like stuck, but I gotta make sure I'm gonna move. It's really trippy what it's doing. And then it moves. It doesn't have a starting left. It did move it, but it does it really rapidly because we don't have what? What's missing? Yeah, there's no left here. I never said what is your starting position. Now you do it, right? You got to get your mouse off of it. It'll keep coming back. Because why is it doing that now? What? Yeah, so the minute we hover, it moves, and then it moves right back, right? Because we're not hovering over any. It moved out of our hover scope, so the minute we move, it moves right back. Okay, so this is an instance of where you need to have a starting property. If you don't have it, left is like, well, what's the starting value? Well, I know left must have defaulted to 0, but if it's not defined here, it's not like opacity. Everything has an opacity. Everything has a background color. Everything is there, but some properties are not. They don't exist. These two go hand in hand, so nothing has a position of left unless you give it a position of left, and nothing is position absolute unless you make it position absolute. And so these two go hand in hand with each other. Okay? Cool. So the position property, once again, relatively easy to use at this point in time. It's just knowing what you want to transition and how to transition it. Okay? So, sure, yeah.
Like right now when we do that, it grows from right and left. If I wanted to grow centered in the page.
Then we have to go to scale.
Okay, this one.
Yeah, because when we do the width and the height, it has like the element it starts here, right? So whatever this parent container is, like that's its parent container. And it sees like, this is where I belong, like this 0, 0 position, this is where I am. If you want me to grow in width, then I have to grow this way. And if you want me to grow in height, I have to grow down because that's the natural flow. When we get to using transform and scale, it will grow out in all directions using this kind of as its starting point. Okay? And then, you know, this width and height has its place. Cool. All right. So let's do this. 7:22. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? When we come back, I'll assign the lab. We'll start working with transition properties. Yeah, let me just count my sheet. Sure. Okay. Okay. Is there any JavaScript for that? No. That's all CSS. Okay. All right. So they're doing hover on it. Okay.
Yeah. But they're so
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like it's off the page, right here, and then when you hover, it'll change it to position or right, maybe 1,000, so it moves it over.
right. So if
Or 0, because you would move it to 0, so it would move this way.
okay. So if you wanted to do that, like you were showing an example for like multiple slides,
Yeah.
But you have to calculate like how big this page is now, and like because then you minus that many pixels, that many pixels.
You could, or you could stack them off the page. If I use position absolute, can I just stack them all?
Oh.
So maybe when you decide to click on the next one, you make sure you target the next one, and I only give that one a position of whatever, and then maybe take the active one and move the active one. So that requires some logic. You have to keep track of what are they looking at, because that has to go left. The one on the right that's out here needs to come in, but if the one on the right is just a bunch of them stacked, what's the next one in queue? Grab the next one, give it a class of active, active moves it over to, and that one would be right 0, moves it over, becomes active. That other one that's there, then just moves left and goes off the screen.
That's like so they basically it's like a checkbox.
Yeah.
And then like it was just sitting here for a while, and then later we just hit it, and I'm not really sure why we had it at all. I mean,
Okay.
you probably have to discuss it, but like
I mean, z-index in itself is to like layer things. So you have width and height, and then you have kind of depth. And just like with position absolute, I can sit things on top of each other, which is kind of like z-index in a way. Like you just layer and get natural elements that just kind of fall in line with one another. It gives one a z-index greater than the other one, and then it positions itself in front of it. So anytime you see a negative z-index, you're moving that thing all the way back as far as you can. Like there's no reason for them to make it a negative 1,011. Like what is that? I don't know what a negative 1,011 z-index would do. They could have made a negative 1. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to take a look and see. It is pretty cool.
Yeah,
That is awesome. I like that. You got that. Shoot me that. I like that. I want to give you demo that.
Yeah. I had to put it in the doc, but this was different transitions.
Right, so.
That's crazy cool.
Had something in
Yeah, that's pretty extreme, man.
Something, yeah, no.
Okay. What I would suggest is just draw that out. Draw it out and give me notes. Yeah, draw it like that. If I want to do this, I can have like the before and after, and you can jump into it. Right. So, show you the starter code, and then what you will be doing. All right. So we're going to add some transitions. So there's a couple of boxes here. They're all going to be hover, and you're going to execute several different transitions. And then there's a bonus here, create your own transitions, whatever you want them to be. And what it's going to look like is this. So if I hover over transition 1, it clearly does what? Background color, right? That's all it changes. Background color, certain number of seconds, that's easy. What happens with that one? So the opacity changes, right? And then it disappears. Cool, easy enough. And what else? The font size, right? Font size and the width change. So you have to target 2 things. Cool. And then what happens with this one? Border what?
border radius.
Border radius. Border radius is what you use to change something to look like a circle. And what else changed? Okay, what changed with the font? And the size, right? So those are the properties that you're targeting. There's addition, once again, I just put these here so you have time to practice, target. Maybe you saw some things that you wanted to do, size something in, slide it out, whatever it is. You could easily do that. Play with position, make it cool. I'm just going to show you the CSS so you know what to target, right? So here we go. First transition is, all right, here are the elements. Everything is pretty laid out. Transition 1, here's the H2, everything is in a main with wrappers. Wrappers are just giving them the general styling, and then each one can be targeted individually using transition 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right? And then I have the same thing down here. These should be 5 and 6. Okay, so I'll save that. I'll go back into the CSS. So I have transition here. Add your transition, right? And then add a hover to the element and CSS property value that changes here, right? We did that. So when I go here, you're going to create a hover for that element. I want to give you just practice doing hovers. And then what is the element that you're changing? You need a transition, and then you need to target the element that you're transitioning, okay? It's the same for all of them. Transition 2, opacity, 1 second, right? Go to opacity, I'm going to say opacity 0 here because we want it to disappear. And then transition, add the transition here. Add the hover element. Transition 3, width, 70 seconds, 1 second, font size, and I'm going to say font size 2 seconds because I don't want to use the all property. I want you to target both of them. Transition 3, right? Then there's transition 4. Border radius 2 seconds, color red 2 seconds, font size 3 seconds, okay? And then these are the values that you're changing to. Add the path, okay? Now for this, also for the last one, you have an H2 in there too. So what does this do? What does that do? What's that? Yeah, this targets the immediate child inside of it. So if you ever see this, that means this H2 needs to be a direct child of transition. It can't be an H2 that's like 10 levels deep. It has to be immediately under this, okay? So you're going to target the transition and move the width, but now you're targeting the text. So you have to target the H2 to change the text of the H2, okay? So let me select this out. Boom, and you're off. And I just put a thumbs up in the channel when you're done with transitions 1 to 4. Click on it so that I know you've accomplished those transitions. Could you do working on the
I'm working on my new one online.
your bonus ones? Make them cool. They're gonna be so cool. you shoot me yours?
Yeah,
Send me your amazing transition.
it'll probably be terrible.
I feel it was just seconds ago amazing.
Just set your expectations so you're impressed by me.
You gotta deliver. All right. So you're saying farm family?
The pirates.
I like that. And then you added a.
I had a picture for the kids.
So you can't. So here's you can't transition the background image, right? Nothing's transitioning here, or did you not? Because it doesn't look like there's no gentle transition.
No, I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it to like do like 2 seconds.
This is transition 5. I hover over transition 5. Yeah. There's no starting thing. I don't know if you can do background image. So this is a list of what's there's background, but you can't do background image. So background image is impossible. And I don't think you can do font family either. Yeah, so that's another one you can't transition as font family. Would have been an
I
amazing.
did, well, we
Huh?
can't do it, but I just want to do it.
Well, you're just changing it. Transitions are when you have a state where it's going from here to here and you're like animating the transition. At any point in time with CSS classes, you could have changed something. That's not a transition. That's just like a, here it was and now it's this.
Okay, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, so. And it shrinks. Is that the most? All right. Font size 0.5M. Cool. Show that one. Anyone else want to send me there so I can see their bonus amazing transitions?
Yeah, I changed it.
Yep. Okay. All right, ready?
And there's a border.
I was just about to say, because that looks like one of the other ones.
I also have a border. See?
Oh, okay.
Let's just start to see.
I don't think it's, I don't know if it's not transitioning the border. You see how the border's there and then it disappears.
No, it's transitioning it. See, because it's.
Well, you clearly see the border as dots and it's visible. The minute I move my mouse off, it's gone. So the border disappears. So I'm going to go back to like animable properties. And, so you can do border. What I think maybe is happening is that this doesn't have a starting border to do anything. And that could be it. It has nothing to go from and to because there is no border.
I will add starting border.
All right. Let's take a look at Ali's home link. All right, we're at 8 completes. So we only have about 3 more minutes. So Ali, what's yours? It's almost like the Matrix. That's yours, right? It's like, zip, zip, zip. And it's like, did you see that? Did you see the cat? So this tells me maybe you're transitioning, like you're trying to transition a position property, and there's no starting transition property. That's what that tells me.
Yeah. Okay, check it again. Now tell me it's real.
Yeah, tell me it's like the most amazing transition. Yeah, see, now you see it transitioning, right? You need a starting thing. And that's important. That's why letting everyone do their own, so that they can come up with the, why doesn't it transition? All right, that's good.
Oh, I see, it's just to teach us all lessons.
No, I want to see what cool stuff you can do. Too. I know what these look like. Those are boring.
You have to go like this.
What the? Whoa. You're using transform then, right? Yeah. I already knew it. Like, I know what this thing does, so when I'm like, you're transforming this thing, like, flipping it back and forth. Awesome.
I didn't get it.
All right, so Aaron's show off.
Look at Darren.
Show off. All right, so what do we got here on the tablet? Let me see. We got 12? All right. We'll jump in. Take a look. So, you know, I'm just seeing that Aaron's works here. Everything goes. Everything's good, right? So, easy enough. It's, we go to the first transition. All you have to do is tell it the transition property, the value that we're targeting, right? Or the CSS property here that we're targeting, and then the optional is the time, right? Without it, it just goes from one state. There's no real transition there. And then on hover, we tell it where we want it to go. So everything, they all have a default color assigned to them. And so now we're just saying change to blue, and then it changes the background color to blue, right? Transition 2. Here, we're saying target opacity, make it take 2 seconds. And then when I hover over this thing, make it turn to opacity 0. Easy enough, right? The third transition was width and font size. Okay. Oh. And I said M's. Here, does anybody remember what M's are doing? Where is M's looking? What's that a percentage of? Is that? I just put it in there, hoping you'd look at it and be like, what did M's do again? And then just quickly Google M's. But M's are a percentage. This represents 1 M in font size is 16 pixels. So this would be 16 pixels, what was it 24 pixels? Because it's 1.5 times that. Okay, 2 would be 32 pixels. So that's what we're changing it from. Now you need 2 separate calls here, like 2 separate definitions, because one is for this and the other has a different time. So it's font size, and then we change those properties. And then once again, just changes. Transition 4, border radius, color, and then font size, right? That's what we're targeting. Color red, so let's see. Now, doesn't change the color though, right? So for some reason the color is not changing. I don't know if it's, because the color looks off here, right? I almost assume blue, this should be blue. Instead it's not, I'm just off the top of my head, that's what it looks like. What's that? Okay. It should transition. So let me just get rid of this paper. I'm just going to open up the solution. See, right? This transitions to white. So I'm just going to see how it's different here. Yes. Let's see. Oh, this is the one where we had the double. Yeah. So here we go. So in this particular one, we have two things that we're targeting, right? So transition 4, because you're transitioning the parent element, you can tell it has a border radius of 0. Did we need to put border radius of 0? I don't know if we needed to. I think if we got rid of border radius 0 here, I don't know if that's a property that we need to have. I don't think we need to have border radius, right? So it's really just this, transition all 2 seconds. And then when we get to the H2, we're also targeting the H2. It is transitioning some things as well, right? So the main parent, transition 4, when we hover, we're going to change the border radius. And when we hover over transition 4, we target a child element, and that's font size and color, and then it would target. Okay? It's what you're targeting. So this design right here will allow you to target other things, and it's kind of cool to be able to do that. Because a lot of the... Yeah.
Does the direction need to be before the designation that it's a child?
This right here?
Yeah, because I did it after and it worked. Does it really matter?
So if we move this, just say we did that. So you're saying if I hovered over that, right?
Yeah.
I have to hover over the actual text. So this directive here says once this transform elements or this transition class is hovered, then target this child and then do the thing on the child. Okay? And so this allows you to structure or organize something like a multiple nested children, and then when I hover over some parent, all the nested things can like do different things. Okay? Something similar to what I was working on. Like this. I was just testing this out. Something that you're going to see is like an overlay. And so watch this. If I hover, where did the thing come from? So I do have overlay here. I'm going to give it maybe a font size so that it's much bigger. Here we go. Font size, I don't know, 32 pixels. So it really pops. All right, there it is. And then it goes back up. All right. So what I have is a parent element and an overlay. They're both, the overlay is inside of this thing. And without looking at the CSS, you might have saw it. How do I get the overlay outside of the box? Because it's coming down. How would I get something, and here it is. How would I position something outside the box? Position absolute, right? So I make the element have a position absolute, and I give it, watch what I give it. I give it a, where is it? Position. I give it a negative top, which means I move it outside the box. The top of the box is right here. So I move it up here so it's outside of the box. And then when I hover, I change the top to be 50 pixels where it drops down. So I hover over the parent. I target the overlay. And then the thing is there. If I get rid of opacity, if I take opacity off of here, you would see the overlay. The overlay is there. So maybe I want to give it maybe a top of 40 pixels or something, get it completely out of there. That's it, and then I just transition it down. When you have the transition the way you want, then you can give it the opacity. All right, that's something that I had used. Let me see. And just a common thing that you'll see, like this. So my portfolio, I imported the same thing. So that thing comes from somewhere else, and it's right above it. And all I do is once I hover over the parent, I target a nested thing, this thing, whatever it is, H2, H3, I don't know, it could be a paragraph. I target it, and then I move it back down. Okay? The thing is always there. So if I target this, you would see, here's the overlay. I have a hover effect, so I have a parent box. I have an image in that parent box. And then I have another element, a whole overlay that has this, and then a link that I could click on, okay? That you view. When I hover over this thing, this overlay drops down, and then you see this, and then you see the button, once again. And it's the same for all of them, okay? This is a common use for the transitions, doing an overlay like this. You can make them appear like they could have been in the middle, and I just make them appear. Right? How do you think I got the color to get a little darker? Opacity, right? On what? What element am I doing opacity on? Just think, what am I moving? What has prominence now? What is here that you see? Well, you see the overlay is kind of what you see now, right? Like the text moved down. There's the overlay, right? There's the overlay. The overlay is always there. You just don't see it. I give an opacity of 0, so you don't see the overlay, right? I think I gave it. Here's the overlay. Here, it has an opacity of 0. If I take away its opacity, you see it. So I've actually given it a background color of RGBA to give it a specific alpha. Because if I do opacity on everything, on the thing, then the text also becomes opaque. But if I do background color opacity, then I can have a background color opacity, nothing else. All the other elements have full opacity 1. Okay, so you have to be careful when you're playing around with the opacities. And that's all I do. When I hover over it, I then give it an opacity of 1. And then the color fades in and you see the color. And then these elements position themselves in and then they fall into place. Here, transition. Okay? Just common use case for these things. And since you know position absolute, you could do this relatively easily. You already know how to move things around. So overlay like that, relatively easy. Awesome. Let's see. Any other? Just taking a look at maybe one other design. All right. So I just had a handful of these. Oh, that's the starter code, right? Just some custom transitions. Once again, what we learned earlier was this. There are a few properties. I was working with Emma. She sent me some. Some of the things that you cannot position, you cannot transition. I have this. This right here shows all of the transitionable properties. So I'm going to slack it out so you have it. The first thing that she had tried was background image. Right? You put a background image. That's not. You can't transition a background image. We can't do that. Okay, so that we couldn't do that. I think the other one was border, right? Now border can be transitioned, but hers wasn't transitioning. Why?
Because I didn't have a starter border.
Exactly. Now we know we have a start color. There is a background color by default, right? There's an opacity by default. You don't have to define those. They're there. But an element does not have a border by default. So I can't go from no border to a border without saying this is the border that it should have been. Okay, I think there was one more property, but I forgot what it was. Remember what it was?
Oh, I had.
Oh, font family.
Yeah, font family.
Yeah, there's no font family here, so you can't transition font families. It's either one font family or it's another font family, but you can't transition. But you can do the font, the size, stretch it, font weight, and that's it. Standard things. But just know if you're trying to do something and it doesn't work, there could be a chance that the thing that you're targeting just doesn't transition. It doesn't support it. So you can take a look here. A lot. There's so many things that you are going to transition that are going to work. But once again, if you're like, oh, it's going to do this and then it doesn't do it, and you're like, anything will change to anything else. But transition means that when it does change, it changes in a graceful manner. Right? That's what it means. That's the idea of a transition. Okay. The transform property. Oh, this was the overlay. So the transform property. All right. Let me go back to. I made some changes to this thing, and I don't want to have the changes here. So I'm just going to get rid of the text overlay. I'll leave the background image. Doesn't really matter. So, when and where to use them. We did the transition, not too hard to do this. Lots of things that we can transition. Now the transform property. What is the transform property going to allow us to do? Okay. Let me just open up W3 schools and we can kind of see what we need. Same thing. There's a property that we hit. In this instance, it's going to be transform. Okay. And then we have to tell it what we want to transform. So there is a requirement here. And the requirement is what's the thing that you want to transform. Now transforms apply to like 2D and 3D transformations to things. Things like rotating an element, scaling it up, moving it from one position to the next, skewing it. If I can like twist it, I can make it come out to you. Really, really some crazy stuff that you can do with this. So you have to tell it what's the 2 or 3D transformation, right? So here you have to tell it what 2D or 3D transformation you want. Transformation, right? And that transformation is going to be things like translate in order to move something, scale in order to have it grow. What's the other one? Rotate to spin it around. Okay. This word's going to be replaced with one of these, and then these things take properties too. Like if I scale, I want to scale 1.5. If I want to rotate, I want to rotate 90 degrees. Okay, if I want to translate, I can say do 10 on the x-axis and then 10 on the y-axis. So this represents x and y-axis. Okay? There's specific translates for x, there's specific translates for y. If I just do translate, then I can target both axes at the same time and make it move to a new position. Okay? There's a cool little, just to show you, somebody created this. This is a code pen. And they added some of these transformations here. So things like rotate. Watch what happens when I rotate. Woo, picture rotates. Okay? If I scale it up, right now it's scale 1. If I scale, it grows in all dimensions. And then it can go back. Things like this, though, where you start skewing things, things get a little wacky. Yeah. It's like really weird. I want to get right back to where it was. All right? Here I can just move it on the X. I can move it on the Y. I can rotate Z. It's kind of crazy. I don't know when you're going to use all the transitions, like all these transforms, but just know that they're there, that you can use them. Okay, there's a whole set of them that you can do, and these are pretty cool that you can do. And we will be taking a look later at, like, animating a hamburger. Like when you have, that's a transform. We're repositioning these things, okay? We'll take a look at that later. So let's apply that here. Here we go, right? Now I did make some changes here. The changes were just to animate the overlay. We could still work with this, doesn't really matter. If you have the old one, all I did was add an overlay in here. It gave a couple of classes, no biggie. So let's say that we want to transform this thing. So same thing, I gave it a parent element, but you would have had it as a div. And if you reopen the one that I have, you'll have these changes. I have parent hover, and then we can tell it what we want to do when we hover. So transition. Okay. If I want to move something to a new position, now we know that we can move it using position absolute, right? So I have the parent. If I wanted to move the parent, right? It has a position relative. What does position relative allow me to do with this thing? Anybody remember what position? Can I use position relative to move something? Okay, you're right. So if I just started here and said left 0, and then over here I said, hey, left, I don't know, 100 pixels, let's see if that moves it. All right, so it moves it. So we can move it using position absolute. Awesome. We're not going to do it. I'm just showing you that we could do it using position absolute. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'll get rid of that. We want to transform this or translate it. So I'm going to say transform translate. That's what we're going to, actually, let's do something really basic. Instead of doing that, maybe I'll rotate it. Let's rotate it, and I want to say maybe rotate it 90 degrees. Let's see if this works. Right? Thing animates, right? You can go in a positive, or I can spin it in reverse by adding a negative. It'll go in the opposite direction, okay? I think you can do a 360 and it should go all the way around, like a double loop. There we go. Easy enough, right? And what negative takes it the opposite direction, okay? So we can rotate something, and it's doing, I mean, it's transitioning it, like it's rotating and it's doing its own kind of transition. I don't think I even need the transition property here, or I do, look. It's not transitioning anymore. I never had any sort of transform, rotate, 0 here, and yet it knows that it was at a specific rotate position, right? There's a default position that it's at, okay? Without this, we're not gonna be able to transform it or mutate it. So these two go hand in hand, right? Without this thing goes nowhere. When we did it earlier with like width and heights, they jumped, they changed. This won't change. So transform is dependent on the transition property. It is a must that that is there, okay? Otherwise, this won't work. All right, so say we rotated. I'm just gonna comment that out. So we can rotate. What if we transform again, and I translate it? Okay, well, when I translate, I can translate on both the x-axis. So if I say, I don't know, translate to 50 pixels and 50 pixels, I'm just gonna give this a shot. Let's see what happens. 50 pixels and 50 pixels. It moves it, and then it moves it back. Once again, it knows where it was and it knows where to change it. So at this point in time, somebody usually asks the question like, well, if you can do a position absolute and you can do it, which one should you choose, right? Now that kind of question is different than say, hey, I can do it with grid or flexbox, which one should I use, right? Well, once again, at that point in time, it depends what you're moving, what your layout is. This has a less impact on kind of the redrawing of this. It goes down to like the nitty-gritties of what's happening under the hood. And so transform kind of does a better job of moving it than position absolute. I think I included an article in here that why translate better than position. And this is the guy that wrote CSS tricks in CodePen. And so he goes into examples of why it is. So if you want to read it, you can read it. I just want to show you that we can do it with both, okay? There is a translate that encompasses both, or I could say translate X and say 50 pixels, and that should just translate on the X. Maybe you don't want to do the Y, but there's also a Y. I wanted to do Y, but then moved out. I think we can even translate Z, but it really doesn't do anything. All right, so I'm gonna hear 50 and 50, just so that you know, you can move things around. So just think, once we get to JavaScript and we scroll and you can target a scroll value. I scrolled 100 pixels. At 100 pixels, maybe you wanna translate some text in that it comes from left to right, right? Like we've seen. Translate's a good one to do that. Last one I kind of want to demo is transform, and we are going to scale. Say 1.5. I think if I just do 1.5, it should scale it out. So this effect is really good. Like you have your portfolio projects, you click on something, and then it just kind of scales up, all right? So if we had multiple things next to each other, this would kind of scale up big and like overpower the other ones that are around it. These are really good properties. Move, rotate, scale, yeah. Once again, it does it in all directions. Every direction is moved. You can also see, because it's a background image, you see how it readjusts the image just at the very end. Watch how the image gets, the clarity of the image gets clear there, and then it gets readjusted. That last final thing is to like make the picture look good is what it is. I think it's trying to implement like background size cover, which I don't think is a property that you can transition from or to, okay? So we have these things, cool? Pretty easy enough property to transition. Lots of use cases for that. Let's go to, hit you up with the lab. All right. I'm going to put this up here. I'm going to show you what it is meant to do. What our little transition lab meant to do. All right. So this is what I want you to do. And then we'll examine the text. If I hover over, oh, what did I hover over? I'm going to move out. What? Okay, right? I can hover down here too. Anywhere that I hover inside of this box, if we go here and we just take a look at the HTML, what did I hover? Mean. There's only a handful of things, and these are the things that move, and I didn't touch those things, so I must have hovered over main. Hovering over main triggers individual transitions on each one of these boxes. All right. What is the, oh, what happened here? Is it over here? Did I lose it? What is the green box doing? What property do you think we're using for the green? Yeah. What do you think we're using for the yellow? Position, right? And this also, right? Isn't green being positioned also? But I'm talking position. Can you use position property? Sure. If you want to, you can use it. Position to me at this point in time seems like a really good use case because why? Why would position be better for this versus the transform? Okay, all right, so I like where you're going. Would it be easier just to say, hey, green box, your right is 0. And then you go 0, right? Or your left is 150 pixels, and then you go left, right? That may be easier. I don't think necessarily, because when you transform, you have to tell it where to go also. So if I say your right is 0, I have to give you a starting right, and that starting right needs to push it away from your 150 pixels. So it needs a starting position of right of 150 in order to have a final position of right of 0. Either or requires you to do something like give it a left. What is this advantage here though? What's the one advantage here? The difference between position and transform. And I had demoed that. Well, what's the difference? So if I'm in a position, if I'm going to move this box here, right? It's going to go here. Say we use position. I have to say left. I'm just going to say left, 150 pixels. And then when we transition, I want to transition it left, 0 pixels, right? And then it goes this way and it puts its, I'm sorry, it's right, not its left. I want to do its right and its right, right? So doing this pushes it this way. This is its right, right? This thing is its right. This is its right. When it's flush right 0, it is flush against the box. That requires that I set this property and that property. If I'm using transform, what would I do? Okay, so say I do transform. We know where it wants to go, right? Transform, right?
Just translate.
150, or transform, or translate, right? So I'm going to say translate. You have to use the transform property. Translate, and I'm going to say x because we're only going on the x. 150 pixels, right? Because the box itself, I think, is 200 pixels. Each individual box is 50 pixels. Do I need anything over here? No, right? I don't need to define anything here. So in the end, transform translate requires that I don't add starting properties. It kind of knows where it was to start off with. When you do position absolute, you need a starting left, right, bottom, top. It doesn't know where you are. You have to tell it where to begin and then go to. This already knows where you are. You don't have to tell it a starting position, okay? So just think of that when you're doing these, okay? You could do the same thing or do a position absolute. And what's the pink box also doing? Yeah, scale, right? So we're moving them by using translate. We're rotating and we're scaling all the elements. Oh, just that one element, right? So you have to make sure you target just that element. All right, so let's take a look and just see. This is where you're gonna add your CSS, right? So add hover to main that targets pink, yellow and green, because I really don't need to do anything with what? Blue. Blue doesn't do anything, it stays right there, right? So you don't have to target that, but you have to target the other ones in order to get them to move. That's where you're gonna do it. You're gonna add your transitions here, right? Transition property gets added on the element itself. Like, this belongs on the core elements properties. This is the element, this is what defines pink, not some other class, not some anything else. This class defines pink. All of pink's default properties belong here, and we add transition. Now, last time I did this, we didn't use it position absolute, just to get more practice with position absolute. So it is there. You can leverage that. They are defined. And then you can add the transitions, or you can opt to do the transform and then move it if you want. You can comment it out and do that. All right. Any questions on the lab? No questions. Jump right in. All right, here we go. Just select it out. I'll say click on thumbs. Done. Click on the thumbs up when you're done. What?
And send them with the thing.
Oh.
perfect, then I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Got it to work.
I'm going to say it's right. Yeah, it's not right.
Yeah, I told you.
You know why? Because they just appear.
Yeah.
All right. So this is it.
Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah. Just appear.
Do you want me to unclip it?
I want you to make it work, Emma. That's what I want you to do.
I'm sorry.
You'll get it. I like it. Well, you're halfway there. I mean, you got them into their new position. Now transition. Yeah. Yeah, work it. Oh, here. I'll show you that. Let me just get out of some of this stuff here.
Okay.
So rotate that one, and then that one just slides down. So,
I'm getting.
yeah, that's all right. Here we go. Shit. I never saw that. Oh, you know what you're doing? You know that you can target two transform properties? It's kind of like, yeah, so here. Transform, you can only target one. I've never seen it used where you target multiple transform functions. But let me take a look. And you clearly have something working, but I've never targeted multiple transforms. So target multiples is this. Transforms. These are target multiples, these transforms on the same element. Here we go. I'm going to go to this one because it looked like using independent ones. No, No, he's in the world of JavaScript now.
Oh, okay.
He's got an array of things. He's grabbing things, and I'm not sure what he's. I'm looking for something basic. Oh, no, you can. So yeah, transform. So you do. I just never did multiple ones, but it looks like you could do what you're doing. So what you're doing works. Act and whack.
Yeah, it's effective.
I mean, I kind of like it. It's like weird.
I know, right?
I want to know how to do that, but other people just go through it. So where is your hover? So the hover is not going to be on the individual elements. It's only going to be on the So you would be doing something like this. Yeah. So if we go back here, right? So here's pink, here's mean div, right? So you would add the hover and target these things. These are the default properties. You'd add the transition, and then your add hover to mean that targets. So I would do something like main, hover, target pink, and then do something pink. Okay? Yeah, that's what we're doing with the overlay. Oh, yeah.
I changed something.
So what did you change? So you don't want the hover on pink. You want it on main. That targets me. Kind of like what we did the last one, the last transition, we targeted TH2. So go back down to the transition. Go back down where it's stated here. Put main before, just like I have it up there. See how I wrote it on line 56?
Yes.
So that's what you want to do. You're targeting, the hover is on this parent element. That parent, the action of hovering, targets pink and then does something directly to pink and pink only. And then you're going to do the same thing here. Main, hover, I mean as an ID, target. Oh, I have to put dot, right? Because it's a class. Dot, yellow. And then the same thing here. Main, hover, dot, green. Okay?
So I will show you refresh it now.
Oh.
It's doing this is funny.
I have to reopen it. I have it open. No. Nope, nope. All right, let me open it again. All right. Okay.
It's doing what I feel like doing.
It's doing
Green.
something. I like how green is kind of like
Green's
making
like,
an
no.
exit. He's like, whoop.
Green's like, no.
I'm out of here.
I sent you mine.
Oh, yeah, let me take a look.
Is doing what I'm supposed to do. I don't know if it's doing it the right way.
Okay, let me take a look. What?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, no, you got it. Right. So these are transitioning, rotating clockwise. This one translates, this one rotates counterclockwise. And then the pink scales and makes it down to the corner. Yeah, you got it.
Good job.
That's why you were like, yeah, I got it.
Yeah, finally got something.
Are they that challenging, these things? I gotta pull back if they're too challenging.
The last two classes I've kind of been struggling. Like I'm understanding it,
Mhm.
but then I feel like my brain isn't. It's like it knows what's going on, but it's like, oh, you have to implement it.
I
I,
know.
don't know if I can do that.
It's funny because there's times, wait till we get to JavaScript, I will do two things. I will do the code pen, the code alone, and then I'll give you your thing. And I'm like, do what I did. Like literally the code here, all you have to do is change like variable, like a class name or do something else, but it is exactly this, just over here. And I've seen people just like go that way, go that way, go the other way. And really, yeah, I will. Mhm. I think we had the solution for these. All right, so let me just put my official solution. We're down to like 1 minute.
I did a new change. It's not right yet, but it's
Okay.
it's hilarious.
Okay. Okay.
No, it's refreshing.
All right, all right. I still like this one.
Yeah.
I want to make it do that. How do you make the green box like just kind of like, hey man, I'm outie. Yeah. All right, here we go. Whoa.
That happened to me.
I like that.
Yeah, I like
Darren
it
had
too.
the same thing. His disappeared, and then it came right back. Like, whoopsie daisy. I'd have to take a look. I'm going to take a look and see what you
I feel like
did.
I'm on the right track then.
Let me just post the solutions for some of these things that we did. For our first lab transitions, that was the starter. Solution for our transform.
The solution for this one.
I'm going to post it in just a minute. Yeah, I'm just getting into editor view so you can see. Yep, there we go.
I know. You probably know it. That's you changed the rotation, right? Yeah, that's what I did. I did rotate. Well, this is like I did rotate 720,
Yeah.
and like and at least it's a different speed than yellow.
There we go. I'm going to post a solution.
Wait, you gotta select it.
Why don't?
What?
All right.
Oh, it's green. Is green at the top? Or is it yellow?
I'll take a look in just a second.
And
Alright.
does it matter? Oh, it's green.
It is green. All right. So let's. I'll go over the solution. Let's see. What do we got for checks? If you did solve it, just check. It looks like we only got three solves up to this point.
And we're actually two if you like.
2.5. If anybody else did figure it out, just click on the plus. That just helps me know in 20 minutes this percentage of the class was able to get it. Just helps me see. All right. We'll see the variations, right? All right. So let me take a look here. All you really had to do was go down to this section here, right? This is all you needed to do down here, right? Everything else was where it needed to be. Oh, no, well, you had to add the transitions, right? You had to tell it what you wanted. I showed you doing all with transition everything, right? Because if I just transitioned like left here, then I don't know, maybe transform wouldn't work. I'd have to test it out. I always use all. It's just kind of this all-encompassing. Instead of targeting one, just target them all. If I decide to change something else later, they will also transition. So for the pink one, oh no, we're doing the green one was the first one that we kind of saw move, right? So the green one goes there. So the green, I did left 145 pixels. I moved it, and everything had a starting position. Like all of these elements had starting positions except blue of left and top, which put them right here, right? I didn't need, like, if I remove left and top for green, is it still there? Still there, right? They're all there. They're all position absolute. They're all going to be there. I left it here to make it easier. If you needed to make a change, those things were there, and at least you'd be able to like make the change and the thing would go, okay? So we'll go down here. Pink, I say green, left 145 pixels, so I want to move it 145 pixels. And I kind of give it just a little space from the end, right? It's not flush against the end. I wanted to get it so it just had a little space from the end. And then transform, rotate 360 degrees. And it moves it counterclockwise. By the time it reaches here, it will have rotated 360 degrees, right? That's its final destination. That's what it needs to do. So they coordinate these efforts under the hood. I don't have to do anything. Yellow, all right, yellow, I said top, I'm pushing it down. Now, why did I do top 145? Because the two default properties that I assigned were what? Yeah, top and left, right? I gave them all top and left. So if I know that they're top and left, then I'm going to push it down from the top, okay? So if I push it down, I'm going to go 145 pixels, and I'm going to go left 45 pixels, just like this did, and I'm going to rotate in the opposite direction. Rotate negative 360 degrees. That takes it there, that takes it there. And then for pink, pink was, once again, from the top, push it down, 145 pixels, and then just scale. Once again, you could have eyeballed the scale. Could have been 1.4, 1.5, doesn't really matter, right? Ooh, and then they all kind of go in sequence, right? Now, how did I get them to sequence? With the delay, right? This is not something that I actually demoed, but I did say it was there. And if you wanted to pause something before the next thing goes, then the delay property here. So all is for every property. This is the duration, and then this is the delay. So the first one, the green box right here, right? The green box would be executed first. And so the green doesn't have a delay because it immediately goes to where it needs to go to. And then the other ones, I just say, hey, wait 1 second before you do anything. And you wait 1 second before you do anything. Without these delays, you would have got something. You would have got the same results, but not, they all just go. And so that at that point in time, you might ask the question, well, how do I kind of pause one to do something, right? Delay a transition. At that point in time, you could have just Googled, hey, delay, delay transition, and just saying, it would have been like, oh, here, transition delay, go take a look. It would have walked you through. You could do the full-blown transition delay, or you could have wrapped it up, doing it the other way, okay? You could have did translate, yeah. When I had set this up previously, I did it as position absolute. Maybe at that time, like the class was struggling with position, because we went over position. We didn't do anything with transforms here, but you know that we could have gone in here. So in the same respect, say we wanted to like revamp this just to do the transform. Well, position absolute there, and I mean, I could kind of use the position absolute, but if I go here to say green, and instead of saying left, what if I'm just gonna comment that out. What if I said translate, transform X, I don't know, 145 pixels. Let's see if this works. I mean, it has position absolute, so I don't know if that's going to, doesn't, oh, I need the semicolon. Oh no, it's not translate, yes, it's transform, translate, yes. All right, here we go. Nope, didn't move it. Oh, because we can't do two of these together. All right, here we go. Hold on. if we wanted to do multiple ones, we have to split them up like that, all right? It does, but now it's doing that whole loopity-doo that you had done, right? So it's transforming and translating it. And I have to take a look.
Try it the other direction. Do the translate or the rotate.
Okay, let's do that.
That's why.
So it's going to move it first. Oh, there we go. So the order of these things. I haven't really done multiple things. Like usually I'll just rotate. These are unique. Like how often do you use these really unique? I'm going to make this thing circle and all of them circle, right? But in the end, I can't really say what kind of project you want to do. I had somebody create like SpongeBob and had like parts of SpongeBob. And if you went over, they spin and circled. And then this one, the nose grew and scaled out. Like they liked this so much, they built a project on it. And so I don't know what project you want to do. It could be just a typical website, or you may want to do multiple things like this. So I just never really go around using multiple things like this. So cool though. So the order of these things is important, what order you have. And you can't do multiple transforms. I cannot go here and say transform. I can't add a second one. They have to be bundled together, and the order is important. Cool? Both of them work. Takes it right back. But with this one, we don't need the position absolute. If I go back to green up here, and I'm like, hey, green, you don't need any of these properties. You don't need them, and you still work. To me, that would be cleaner. If I don't need position absolute, then I would turn them all off. I mean, I was excessive here adding all these because I wanted to like give people pointers, and then they could easily make the transition. Okay? Sweet. I think I posted the solution. So those solutions there, you can take a look at it. We got 9:53. All right, cool. So what I wanted to do is the last thing, because we're at 9:53, was just a animated kind of hamburger codolo. So this is, we're going to create a little animated hamburger. And just to show you how we can use the transform property also. And it's going just to look something like this. I'm going to change maybe the background color. Get rid of this. Oh, I made it pink. All right. This is what we're aiming for. I just change the background color because then this one you can't see. We hover over it. That's what happens. Okay, I have 3 divs. They could be anything, right? I could make those paragraphs if I wanted. They're just elements with a border radius. They're stacked on top of each other with some sort of margin in between them, right? These things could literally be anything you want. One of them disappears. The middle one disappears, right? It shrinks in size, and the other 2 reposition themselves to form the X, right? So this little transition, kind of a cool little transition. So we're going to start with that. I'm going to slack it out. All right. So I told you I have 1, 2, and 3. They have a width. So I only see 1. I gave them all borders, right? So here's nav icon. Nav icon has a border. The divs don't have anything, right? So let's give the divs some properties here so we can at least see the divs themselves. So maybe, I don't know, what are we going to do? Let me quickly take a look at what properties I gave because I want to make it exactly. So we're going to do height. So we need to give it height. Height, and I'm going to say height 5 pixels. Let's give it a height 5 pixels and see what we got. Okay. So now I'm just going to take a look and see what we have so far, right? And looks pretty obvious. 1, 2, 3. They're all the same. So I'm going to give them all. The one thing I'm going to do here, just for the sake, I'm going to move the border from the icon to the divs. We can kind of see the divs. Now we know where the divs are, right? Okay, so we have the divs, easy enough. We want to maybe turn those divs black so at least we can see the colors. So I'll just do background, black, right? Now they're all black. You couldn't tell what that thing is. That could be just an element, and that's the background color. So what we're gonna do here, I'm gonna go down here and add margin. Now I'm gonna give it 7 pixels on top, which is 0 pixels to the right. And now we have what would be our little hamburger, right? For aesthetics purposes, so I have the border as 1 pixel solid. I'm gonna do this also, border radius. I'm gonna give it just 3 pixels to give it a like nice, soft kind of hamburger-esque edge, right? Okay. So now we have those elements. I'm just gonna tidy up here. I go up here, I tidy my CSS, it'll just make everything look nice. Okay, now we need to target the elements that we kind of want to move, right? Well, we know that in the end, the thing that we're going to be really touching or hovering over will be nav icon, right? That's what we've been doing. Nav icon contains these children. They'll be the nav icon. We hover, and we'll target those elements, right? Sweet. So let's target each individual one first, and then later on, we can hit those properties, all right? So inside of nav icon, right? We can say div first of type, right? We can target that. I mean, here we can also maybe just to know that we did target the thing, why don't we give it a, maybe a background color of, I don't know, pink. Just to have several colors. There, we know that we targeted it. You know that that thing works. Instead of targeting being like, did it work? Did it not work? I'm gonna save it. If I wanna target the second thing, nav, icon, div, right? It's an nested div. How do I target it? And there we go. And everyone's gonna get it. Nth of type. Number 2. And I'm gonna say BGC, I don't know, maybe light blue. All right, those are my favorite colors. Light blue, boom. And then the last one, once again, we have a couple of options. I'm gonna do last of type. And BGC, maybe light green. Just so that we know we're targeted. We have all the elements, we're targeted, they're there. All right. So I'm gonna save it. There's a little hamburger demo. Okay. We have our elements, and now we want to hover and change things, right? Okay. So all of the elements are going to be transitioned, correct? Okay. So on the div, I would add the transition property, right? The base element style right there. Transition, I'm going to say all properties that change in 1 second. 1 second. Okay? That's all I'm going to do. 1 second. There's other properties like easing, and easing allows you to adjust the, does it come out quickly and then slow down within the same time frame? Within 1 second, does it zip out and then slow down to me that? Or does it come out slow and then zip to the end? It's timing. We're not going to worry about timing now for that, but that's an additional optional property. So I'm going to go down here. We have these 3, right? Now what we need to do is target the nav icon, div, right? And actually nav icon hover. Once we hover over it, right? Because that's the thing. Once we hover over it, what are we going to target? Well, when you hover over it, I want you to target the immediate, and then you can just take this first of type, right? I mean, you can retype it if you want. You can just take first of type and then tell it to do something. So in essence, if we took these things, all we'd have to do is kind of like take the elements themselves, copy and pasting them, and then just precede this with hover. I'm just going to use the caret sign to say it belongs inside of it. Okay? Same thing with the last of type. You can do the whole thing and then just get rid of the green color, whatever easiest. I'm just trying to position this thing so when we do it, it's really easy. Right, there we go. I'm going to save it. In case you got lost, you just want to copy paste. This is what we did. Now this is what we did. Okay? This is so that when we hover over the thing, we can target this, right? We just targeted these to give them some color. We know how to use those. Easy enough, right? But now when we hover, we need to target them again to do something else. All right. So what's the first thing that we're going to target here? The first thing that we're going to do? Okay. So if I take a look at what this thing does, all right, so it looks like the first one, we could always target the first one, move it, and then kind of go through. The first green one is rotating, right? It does rotate. What you don't also see is that it does translate itself a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. So on hover, the first of type, let's do transform. Transform, I have to spell it right. And I'm going to just say, let's test that it works. Rotate. And we're going to rotate 135 degrees. Okay? Let's just see if this works. If it rotates, it does, right? Okay, cool. That thing rotates. Awesome. We still need to position this thing. This isn't where we want it, but we're going to go back. We'll reposition the Y later. I just want to maybe make them rotate first. What's the last one needs to rotate also, right? So I'm going to go to the last of type and say transform, rotate, right? And this is going to rotate negative 135 degrees. We're going in the opposite direction. Okay? So just zoomed in a little, save it. Once again, if we do it, look. It's kind of cool. If you wanted an arrow, there you go. You got an arrow, right? So you could create an arrow if you wanted to. And that's also one of those transitions too. It creates arrows. You would need to do what? If you wanted this to truly be an arrow, you need to maybe transition them on the X to move them over just a little so they're touching flush this. But we have the two things there, right? They're still not in the position that we want. They're kind of weird. They should be like an X. So if this needs to be moved down and this needs to be moved up, what's the other property that we would use? Translate what? Y, right? Y controls the up and the down. And it's clear that this pink should be down here and the green should be up. And if we could move them, right? If they were like this and I move them up, they would be an X. So I'm going to go back here for the first one. And for the first one, I'm going to say translate Y 12 pixels. Okay? Just translate it 12 pixels, and let's see if it moves down. Oh, it moved down 12 pixels. Okay? Once again, the order is important. We realize, like, move it first on the transform, like translate it first to move it to a position and let it rotate in action. So I'm going to save it. If we hover over it, that's what happens. So we only really added 2 transforms. One to the first, one to the last. So what do you think we have to do for the last one?
Translate Y negative 12 pixels.
Yeah, translate Y. Why is this doing it? Y negative 12 pixels. So we move it up. Positive moves things down. You all start at the very top. 0, 0. Everything is a positive movement down. Anytime you do negative, means you're going up in the opposite direction. Same thing with like position. If I do left negative, I'm off the screen. If I do right positive, so far I can go off the screen as well. I can push things off the screen. So now if we do this, what's that? Oh yeah, okay. You see, does that? Maybe because of the size of them? All right, so maybe change this over, 15? All right. There you go. So we have to change it a little bit. Here, 15 pixels on, translate well. Funny, the one that I have has it as 12. I'm just, this is a weird thing. It just does what it does. Your work with 14? Like my solution that I'm looking at has them as 12 pixels, but if we need to like adjust it just a little bit, then that's fine. So now they're working, right? Everything's good. Now what do we have to do? Okay, so we could do this. Now, if we go back to this, what happens to the middle thing? Look at it. Does it look like it's just opacity where it fades in opacity? Or does it do what? It like caves in on itself like something like black hole, like, right? If we had to make the assumption we're going to be doing this, what would do that? What would allow something scale, right? We scaled up, we could scale down, right? So let's try on this one to do a transform, right? Scale 0. That should make the thing just, wherever its position is, just zoom into the middle and watch. It zooms right into the middle. Okay? You created a hamburger. Yeah, these little tiny things are really cool. In the end, there's libraries that provide us the functionality to do this. But if you wanted to do this, there's so many different ones when it comes to transitioning these things to basics. Yes. It wasn't an article that I had, but I had some other articles, solution for Pincer, no. Thought I had some other articles on transitioning hamburgers, and there's so many things that you can do. There's so many working examples of how to transition. Unless I have it here. No, this is just, that's an article that I was looking at. Yep. Unless I maybe add it towards the top when we're talking transitions, paper video series, auto prefixer. Here is one. Oh, I had shown it earlier, right? So here, this one's a click. I have to click. That's JavaScript. But still the same thing. Clicking doesn't change the fact that it's CSS properties. It's just, oh, you clicked me, I got to add a class to the thing or grab the thing and give it a CSS. It's the same concept. We'll get into that next week. And then this one also does it where it splits it. Like these two things just split. This one comes down. So there's lots of unique things. And then for the design of these things, this one only has 3 spans. This has 6 spans. This has 4 spans and then 3 spans. Like, to create these designs requires, like, this individual one is actually, each one of these is 2 spans together. Okay? When I click on it, I just bring 2 spans together, like, and then these 2 spans just zip apart. Once again, I don't spend my days doing all of this. This is, you know, time consuming to just do these little tiny things. You know, with our little hamburger, I'd be happy with this thing. Like, I'd be happy using that forever. I got my hamburger. Like, I don't need 10 different hamburgers, right? 1 hamburger is enough. But there's other ways to do it. And then they show you here how they're doing it. Now, the only other thing I want to point out here is when you are using the transform function, right, which is what we've been using, some browsers don't just support the transform property by default. You need to prefix it with a vendor-specific prefix. So you're going to see these prefixes used quite a bit. WebKit, Moz, Opera, Mozilla, Opera. I think WebKit is Chrome. I'd have to take a look. And so what happens is this. There's tools out there. Just remember, there's tools out there that if I hit a button, It'll look through my CSS, see transition, grab all the WebKit labels and just add them. Like, you're not going to sit there and do this. You're not going to create one transform and then add 3 extra ones. It's too time consuming. You're not efficient. But when it comes to these vendor prefixes, if we wanted to do something, we could add a transition here, and then it tells us the transition here. It'll just kind of give us the prefixer right here. It creates it for us. I say transition all, and it goes over here, and it's like, all right, the prefix here, these are the prefixes that you need. WebKit, Opera, transition is by itself, right? Sometimes even backgrounds for linear gradients, which is a way to like have a color kind of gradient its way across from top down, left to right. That also needs some WebKits. So you're creating your site looks great, and somebody opens it up on Opera. I don't know why they open it up on Opera, and then all of a sudden it doesn't look good, it's not doing the thing. You're like, why not? Because you don't have some of these things to support those other browsers, okay? So they have tools like auto prefixer, and there's a few other, that was vendor. Here's a generator too. So I just say, hey, target transition, right? That's what we've been doing. Or maybe transform. Let's do a transform. Hey, I want to scale, I don't know, 1, rotate, I don't know, 360 degrees or 60 degrees. And then here is my WebKits and my vendor prefixes. I would just copy and paste this, right? But in the end, you won't be doing this. You'll be using a third-party tool that'll examine your CSS and add that stuff. This would be way too tedious. No one would be efficient if they're sitting all day doing this. Okay, you'd go to a site like this, copy and paste it, or you'd run a tool to do it. Okay, CodePens they do have something like auto prefixer, but I haven't really seen the thing work. I haven't seen it change anything. Like, these are already done, but if we went to hours and I went here and I was like, hey, can you auto prefixer? I don't know if it sees it. It doesn't really add it here, so I don't know if that's working or not. Can't really say. Unless there's a tool here that you're like, auto prefix it. But yeah. So lots of things you can do. Lots of things you have to be aware of when you're doing transitions. Transitions are relatively easy, right? Transforms aren't so hard either. It's the order of the transform, what you're looking to transform. And you can do really, really cool things with them, okay? The only thing I want to point out also is that there are things like Animate CSS, which is a CSS library that gives you the ability to choose specific classes, and I can just do this, pulse. You see how that pulses? And you can animate it. If I view it on GitHub, I can see the documentation, and really it's about adding classes. These are class names, and if I import this style sheet, the CSS style sheet, if we import it, and I target something that has a class of wobble, the thing wobbles. It's really that easy. It wobbles. You can control it. There's other control mechanisms down here where you do the duration, the delay, whether it keeps toggling or not, like whether it keeps bouncing back and forth. Outside of that, it's just adding a class to the thing. Right here. Here's the H1. I don't know if anyone can see it. Here's the H1. The H1 has a class of animated, infinite, bounce, delay. And so I want to animate it. Obviously, it's animated, and animated has something. I want it to bounce. Animated tells it that animate CSS is watching it. Bounce is the action that you want to perform. Infinite means just keep doing it over and over and over again. And delay 2 seconds. So when whatever triggered it, wait 2 seconds and then do the thing. So there's a lot of libraries out there for you to like add transitions that you don't have to work through on your own. So you might want to take a look at something like Animate CSS, and there's another one called Wow.js. But this is a JavaScript library, and it uses Animate CSS. So it actually uses it, and then it has all these animations. See how these things just come in? That's JavaScript triggering it, but it's Animate CSS transitions doing. So it's a combination of the two. So if anything, take a look at WowJS, maybe you'll see something that you want to use. Just going to slack it out. WowJS and Animate, and if they are things that you're like, oh man, I really want to use that, speak to me and we can try to get something up and running. And cool. That is transitions. Questions? Like transitions better than position? Yeah. I mean, you're positioning things, you're moving them. Just transitions are a nice way to get them from point A to point B. Awesome. So, let me just see for homework. What do we have for homework here? Because we do start, get ready for it. JavaScript, we are starting JavaScript Thursday. Yes, JavaScript's fun. It's a big learning curve, but it is fun. We'll have lots of fun with it. What I want you to do is start deciding on a final project idea. You don't have to link it right now. We're going to do it for next Tuesday. But I want you to think about it and start drawing it. I don't care if it's on a piece of paper and you're on the train. It doesn't have to look pretty. I just have to be like, they're thinking about it. That's really what I want. Okay? And I want you to think about what it looks like on mobile first, because that's the approach. I also want you to start working through the free code camp. Has anybody gone to free code camp? All right, free code camp, really cool site. And just start working through the JavaScript section. You have to log in, it's free. And introduction to JavaScript, there's so many, all of this. There's so much stuff here for JavaScript. This alone can take you weeks to really go through and understand. All I want you to do is like start working through it. Have a few minutes, go here, go to the first one. Read what it walks you through. This is just adding comments. And it's just like, hey, write a comment. And that's a comment. And we'll get to that. Write what they tell you. They should tell you exactly what they want. Create a comment style command that contains at least 5 letters. Hello. Create that contains at least 5 letters. Just showing you how easy it is. Let's see if this will do it. And if I do hello, and I run the test, oh my God, I passed the test. Okay. And then you go to the next one. So if I X out of this. So once again, I did what it told me down here. I read this to see what it was wanting. I did the same thing, ran the test, passed the test, go to the next thing. Keep doing that as often as you can. Work through all of these. Okay, Free Code Camp has so many things to work through. This is just basic HTML. If you want some of that practice, good. Flexbox and Grid, responsive web design, JavaScript, 300 hours of JavaScript. Right? You got 300 hours just sitting around in your back pocket, right? There's a lot of stuff. 300 hours for front-end libraries like Bootstrap, jQuery. We're going to be doing jQuery, and when we hit jQuery, I'm going to be like, go here and do some jQuery, right? So there's a lot of stuff you have to know to be a front-end web developer. And I just kind of want you to get used to using the tools. That's really it. That's the homework. Start working through it. I didn't say how many sections, just work through it. Cool. Outside of that, just exit tickets. Just give me an exit ticket. Let me know what you thought of transitions. Of course, you always do. All right. All right. All right. I know. You got it.
I made that square go all the way around.
I'm going to take a look at yours later. Yeah. How'd you do that? Hey,
Yeah.
don't forget that. I gotta say. Can't say anymore.
If I forgot it after that, then I did there.
No, they'll be in front lines.